Ms. Marcos, can I just start with you? You testified a moment ago to Senator Butler that every child gets a Know Your Rights presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that before or after you release them to labor traffickers?
Senator, every child that comes into our care gets a Know Your Rights presentation as well as...
Have you read these New York Times reports, these stories, the series of stories the New York Times has done on the children who are in your care? Have you read them?
Yes, I have.
Have you read that children are scrubbing dishes, they are operating heavy machinery, they are delivering meals, they are harvesting coffee, they are working construction, they are working as housekeepers, they are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid, they are not going to school, they are not cared for, they are not giving meals, almost all of it illegally. Are you aware of that? That's a yes or no.
Yes.
Do the Know Your Rights presentation help them in those situations?
Senator, ORR...
That's a yes or no, I think. Do you really think that you're helping these children by releasing them to labor traffickers and, yes, sex traffickers? 85,000 children whom you have no contact with, and your answer is we gave them a presentation before we turned them over to these people who are exploiting them on a scale not seen in this country for 100 years, a century. A century. It's a disgrace in the United States of America. Let me ask you this. You did an audit, I noticed, where you gave yourself a clean bill of health. So just tell me this. Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Senator, we have a thorough vetting process.
Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Yes, we go through
No, you do not. You do not. Have you read the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations reports on your office? There was one in 2016. There was one in 2018. There was one in 2020. There was one in 2022. Spanning administrations, what they found is you do not require sponsors to document their relationship with the child. You release them anyway. What about background checks? Do you require background checks on all adults in the household?
In cases where the child is being released to their parents, we do not require background checks. But Senator, I would
Do you
really
require
like
background checks on all adults in the household in any case?
Yes, in some cases we do.
What percentage of cases do you do background checks on the adults in the household?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Do you do home visits in all cases? You can actually see where these children are being released, whose care you're putting them in?
We do not do home visits in all cases. Senator, I'd really like the opportunity to talk about what we are doing.
I know what you're doing, and it's incredibly and totally inadequate. And we can read about it in the New York Times. Since you say you've read it, let's talk a little bit about that New York Times report if we could. Here's a quote from the April 17th installment. Again and again, veteran government staffers and outside contractors told HHS, including reports that reached the Secretary, that children appeared to be at risk. Did you warn the Secretary that children were at risk?
Senator, I'm in regular contact with the Secretary.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
Safety and well-being of children is our top priority.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
I'm not going to get into the conversations I've had.
You're here and you're under oath, and this is an oversight hearing, and we need to know what you're doing because you're manifestly not doing your job. Did you warn him that children were at risk? Do you believe that children are at risk? Let's start with that.
Yes.
Okay, did you warn the Secretary?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics of my conversation, but I would like the opportunity
Why
to
wouldn't you
talk about,
warn the Secretary that children were at risk?
I would like the opportunity to talk about what we
Let's
are
look at what the
doing.
Secretary said to you. The other one, James. Yeah, that one. At least 5 HHS staff members said they were pushed out after raising concerns about child safety. Mr. Becerra, the Secretary, told the ORR director, that's you, right, that if she could not increase the number of discharges, he would find someone who could. And then he went on to say that if Henry Ford had run his plants like this, he would never have become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line. Get the kids out, run them through, get them out to those sponsors, those traffickers. Why didn't you resign when he said this? Do you think that this is morally acceptable?
Senator, I joined ORR in September of 2022. I believe that was reported prior to my arrival, but I cannot speak.
This is from an article this year.
I can't speak to what the secretary.
Do you think that this is acceptable to run ORR like an assembly line and to release these children to traffickers?
I can assure you we do not run ORR like an assembly line. The safety and well-being of children is our top concern. And by
Plainly
statute,
not. Plainly, it is not your top concern because you have managed to lose 85,000 of them. And the Times knows where they are, or 2/3 of them, and they're with labor traffickers. It's unbelievable. Let me just ask you this. How many kids right now, of the 430,000 approximately, unaccompanied children have crossed the border under this administration? It's an astounding number. How many are you in regular contact with right now?
Senator, we have a number of different providers across the country who
But what's the number?
different.
What's the number? How many of you are you in? You said child welfare is your top concern. What's the number?
I don't have the specific number.
How can you not know? Why would you come to this hearing and not know?
Respectfully, if you would like us to provide comprehensive case management to children after they're released from our care, so we can report.
Respectfully, I would like you to do your job and not release children to human traffickers. Respectfully, that's what I would like. I'd like you not facilitate the largest child trafficking ring in American history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr.
Congressional oversight hearings often serve as the final line of defense for the vulnerable, where administrative procedures are weighed against human outcomes. In the fall of 2023, the Senate Judiciary Committee convened to address what many considered a moral and administrative emergency. At the center of the storm was Robin Dunn Marcos, the director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, OR, an agency tasked with one of the most delicate mandates in the federal government: the safe care and placement of unaccompanied children. To understand the 2026 legal landscape, we must analyze the specific breakdown in the vetting process that allowed unaccompanied migrant children to be released into exploitative labor conditions across the United States. This hearing was an interrogation into how 85,000 children, roughly the population of a mid-sized American city, effectively vanished from the government's radar after being released to sponsors. A central theme of this hearing was the sponsor vetting failure. Senator Josh Hawley challenged Director Dunn Marcos on the adequacy of background checks and relationship documentation. From an educational perspective, this illustrates the administrative shortcut problem. Between 2021 and 2023, the surge of over 430,000 unaccompanied children crossing the border created an immense logistical bottleneck. In response, the ORR reportedly moved toward expedited vetting to clear capacity. The legal education here is critical. While the director cited a thorough vetting process under oath, multiple Senate reports spanning from 2016 to 2022 found that sponsors were frequently not required to document their legal or biological relationship with the child. This lack of verification creates a vacuum that labor traffickers are all too willing to fill. For the viewer, the takeaway is the accountability gap. When a government agency prioritizes the speed of discharge over the verified safety of the placement, the federal government ceases to be a protector and inadvertently becomes a facilitator of exploitation. The discourse then shifted to the investigative findings published by the New York Times, which served as the evidentiary backbone of the hearing. Senator Hawley laid out a harrowing list of documented cases: children as young as 12 scrubbing industrial dishes, operating heavy machinery, harvesting coffee, and working overnight shifts at food processing plants. The legal core of this issue is the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA. The FLSA strictly prohibits minors from working in hazardous occupations, yet the Know Your Rights presentations mentioned by the ORR director appeared to be an entirely inadequate defense for children trapped in debt bondage schemes. From a 2026 perspective, we see that this hearing marked a turning point. The standard of care was no longer being judged by the intent of the agency, but by the reality on the ground, a reality where children were delivering meals and working construction instead of attending school. One of the most provocative portions of the hearing involved the assembly line metaphor. Senator Hawley cited reports that HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra pressured ORR staff to increase the speed of discharges, reportedly comparing the process to a Henry Ford assembly line. This is a vital lesson in institutional integrity. If the leader of a child welfare agency views the discharge process as a volume-driven manufacturing task, the individual needs of the child are inherently sacrificed. In the 2025 to 2026 legislative cycle, this assembly line culture has led to proposed reforms that would mandate a child-first metric for HHS funding. The 85,000 lost children, those whom the government could not reach via follow-up calls, remain the primary evidence of a release and relinquish model that focuses on clearing beds rather than ensuring long-term welfare. The legal and ethical debate here is centered on the non-delegable duty of care, the question of whether the government's responsibility ends the moment the child walks out the door with a sponsor, or if it persists until that child reaches the age of majority. Furthermore, we must consider the suppression of dissent within the agency. The hearing noted that at least 5 HHS staff members were reportedly pushed out after raising concerns about child safety. This represents a breakdown of internal controls. In any large bureaucracy, whistleblowers are the early warning system. When that system is silenced by leadership, as alleged in the testimony, the agency becomes manifestly unable to do its job. In 2026, the focus of congressional reform has moved toward mandatory home visits in 100% of cases involving non-parental sponsors. This is a direct policy response to the inadequacies exposed during this 2023 testimony. The director's admission that she did not know how many children the government was in regular contact with was seen as an admission of a systemic failure to monitor the very population the ORR was created to serve. In summary, the October 2023 Senate Judiciary hearing reveals a profound moral and legal crisis in the management of unaccompanied minors. Whether it is debating the lack of background checks on adults in the household or the refusal to acknowledge the Secretary's assembly line comments, every exchange is a lesson in how oversight is enforced in a republic. These are not merely partisan talking points, they are foundational questions about the protection of human rights within our borders. By understanding the link between executive mandates, labor law violations, and vetting protocols, we can see why the 2026 legislative sessions are so focused on criminalizing the negligent release of minors. The 85,000 children represent a call for a fundamental restructuring of how we handle the most vulnerable among us. As we move forward, the oversight of today must ensure that the government never again facilitates an assembly line for exploitation.